Welcome to In the Gutter, a podcast that is all comics, all bangers, all the time, with story expert Lonnie Diane Rich and superhero scholar Joshua Unruh. One of the hosts has read almost no superhero comics, and the other has read almost all of them. We'll let you sort out which is which. And now, In the Gutter.
Okay, so at work this week, we found ourselves one morning listening to a great deal of Taylor Swift. And I think she's super talented. I don't have like big Taylor Swift feelings. I'm sort of a filthy casual. Like I've listened to some Tay-Tay, but I'm not like all about that life. But my coworkers were trying to get me there, right? So it was like over the whole thing. And what I stumbled on that I want to discuss with you today is that there is one Taylor Swift song that I listen to a lot because they played it a lot in my workout classes. And it's Ready for It. Yeah. Right? That I don't know if you know that one, but I like it. It's good. It's also apparently exactly the kind of thing that filthy casual Taylor Swift fans like, because the actual fans are like, well, I guess. But the thing that was fascinating here is I had forgotten that I stole a lyric from that on purpose and turned it into villain dialogue in something that I wrote. Now, the funny thing is, I can't remember what it was. Like, it's out in the world somewhere, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah. And I do this, not all the time, but fairly regularly. Like, it's not an accident. It's not, oh, it's in my head and it comes out of a villain's mouth. I'm like, that line goes fucking hard, and I'm going to put it in somebody's mouth. Like, there's 2 or 3 Pipettes lyrics in my Teen Agents novel, right? So first of all, before I go any deeper into my feelings on that life choice, is this a thing that you, as a writer of many things, do or have ever done or thought about doing?
I have done it accidentally. I've done it where I've been, thumbing through like a published book, and then I'm like, oh, that's a reference to this. Like there are certain lines that I that were just deep in my head, and so I thought they were mine when I wrote them. But also it's like if it's a line, like one of them was I'm sorry to be the sugar in your gas tank, right? Which comes straight from an episode of Moonlighting from the 80s. So like I had heard that, when I was a kid watching Moonlighting, and then I put it in a book, and then I was, rewatching Moonlighting many years later, like when the DVDs came out, and I was so excited I got all the DVDs, and then I heard him say it, Bruce Willis say it, and I was like, oh shit, I put that in my book, and I felt a little guilty about it, but then I was like, well, something that small, like a line, is something that like it'll just be in your head, and sometimes you don't know whether it's you or whether it's not you. So that kind of thing I think is okay.
Well, and I personally, now, I think it's fine even when I steal it on purpose. But when I did it before, I would feel a little bad about it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it as an Easter egg, right? Like I want people to be like, hey, that's Pipette's lyric or whatever. So I'm not stealing it, but I felt a little bad about it because it's somebody else's. And this is the beautiful comic book connection. And then I remembered that one of the most famous and seminal X-Men stories, which was turned into a movie, basically rips off the title of a Moody Blues album.
Yeah. That kind of thing happens.
I think I was in my 30s. No, he did it Claremont did it on purpose. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Sure,
but I was in my 30s before I realized it, and all of a sudden I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine if one of my characters.
It's not plagiarism. Right. It's a reference, and cultural references are all over. Everything we say, all the phrases that we use, all the cliches that we engage in, whatever, like those are all things that are from the culture. So I think that there's definitely like, you want to be careful. One of the nice things that you can do is like at the end in the acknowledgments, lay out the references so that you're properly citing your sources, as our dear friend, Dr. Kelly Jones, would absolutely recommend.
Cite those damn sources.
But my problem is that I don't realize that I've pulled from something. I had somebody who got shot in the stomach in one of my books and then looked down at it and said, bitch, right? Which comes straight from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I had no idea. I had no idea. So at the time, it wasn't a reference I was deliberately, trying to pull. And I think that like, if you use one quick thing, by accident or whatever, that's fine. But like, here we are, we're doing the JLA, right? And all of these are titled, from references to 1950s sci-fi, movies. So I think that like there is absolutely a space for that. I think, there's a fine line. You gotta be careful. You gotta be aware. But I think that you're okay.
So first of all, we should come back to those titles now that we are at the end of the thing, because I want to talk about why those are things. That was the thing I mentioned a couple issues ago. And then before we get into the summary, just so nobody thinks I'm being needlessly like mysterious or whatever, the X-Men story is Days of Future Past, P-A-S-T, which is referencing the Moody Blues album Days of Future Past, P-A-S-S-E-D. And my Taylor Swift line was, I'll keep him like a vendetta. And look, that shit goes hard. I regret nothing about putting that into a villainous dialogue.
Well,
Come
if
on.
Taylor sues you, I will be at your side.
Come at me, Tay-Tay. It's fine. How about a summary?
All right, let's do a summary. Roll the music, Jack.
In JLA Volume 1, Issue Number 4, Superman realizes that something is hinky because he's not dead and can still use his super hearing. He figures out the HyperClan is Martians and proceeds to fry Protex with his heat vision. Superman is so sick of Golden Boy's shit that his fists itch. Meanwhile, the missing Martian Manhunter reveals himself to be Armech in disguise. It's a triple cross! Turns out the HyperClan aren't just Martians, they're evil genocidal pale Martians, and Jean, a peaceful green Martian, is also done putting up with their nonsense. You see, the pale Martians crippled humanity's potential in prehistory, and instead of being a world of superhumans, we turned out to be just humans. For this crime and many others, the Pale Martians were sentenced to a place between space-time called the Still Zone. The Pale Martians eventually found their way out and made their way back to Earth to finish what they started and enslave humanity. The JLA, however, says, nah, brah. While Superman handles Protex, Jean frees the rest of the League, and all the Pale Martian ass that's fit to be kicked gets kicked, sometimes into orbit. Good job, Wonder Woman. Once HyperClan is all sorted out, it's up to the JLA to handle the other Pale Martians invading Earth. Superman inspires the world to rise up against them with fire. In the aftermath, the JLA investigates the Still Zone, renews their commitment to catch humanity when it falls, and builds an outpost on the moon called the Watchtower. Once again, Earth is safe. For now.
All right, Joshua. So here we are at the end of this like opening arc of the JLA book, which is interesting. Wait, the book is the whole volume, not the. Did I say that right?
You're good. We're not doing that. You're doing terrific, Lonnie. Keep going.
Okay, keep going.
We're good.
I want to make sure I'm learning and doing it right and applying the lessons that I've learned while doing this. All right. Let me start that over then.
No. You're great. We're not starting anything over. I'm going to do it for you one more time.
Jack's got to edit something. Okay, fine, whatever. Jack,
I got you. All right. JLA is the book or the title, right? That is the overall.
Yes.
These issues are going to keep coming out, ad infinitum. That's what they are. Because it has always been Justice League of America before this moment, it's volume 1, like literal volume 1, like we talked about from the publishing perspective.
Yes.
We are specifically zeroed in on the Grant Morrison and Howard Porter run, which is the set of issues that those creators did together, along with their colorists and letterers and things.
Right.
And we are now in the 4th and final issue of the initial arc that kicked all that off. Was that basically your understanding?
Yes, I think so. But every now and again, I get confused and I'm not really sure. So anyway, let's get to our overall response. While I'm still trying to learn how comics work.
Whatever, you're doing terrific.
Thank you so much, teacher. What do you think about this issue?
Okay. I love that the fight at the end is more like an impressionistic painting than an actual fight. I love that
Yes.
Earth rises up because Superman inspires them to do so. I love Flash and GL pissing in each other's cereal. I love Wonder Woman fucking shit up. I love Batman being a badass. I love Jean punishing the pale Martians with irony. I love the sheer scope of the whole thing and how it's only the beginning. In short, I love it, but we knew that going in. How do you feel about this fourth and final issue and the arc as a whole?
I liked it. I especially liked it at the end. Like at the end, it kind of, how there are some stories that you're in it and you're like, okay, here we go. And then finally at the end, they like pull it all together, like a purse string. And then you all of a sudden feel like, okay, now I get it. Now I'm in, and I just needed that. Again, like I can't, like I can say it's a little frenetic, but that can't be criticism because that is a feature, not a bug with this ship, right? This is the way,
yes.
This is how it was designed to be. So either get on the jet ski or get off. I'm on the jet ski. Absolutely. I got a little annoyed at the art for the Wonder Woman in space fight with Primate. That was sexualized in a way that was completely unnecessary, but whatever. Moving on because, man, this thing moves fast. I thought that the John stuff was really, really powerful. I loved it. And the thing is that they didn't spend much time on it. They didn't really go into it that deeply, but understanding the context of everything that he's going through, even as minimally as I understand it, made that a really powerful moment, And so I was like, damn. And he, I didn't really understand him before. The first time I ever saw him was in an issue of Sandman, which I was doing for the Endless podcast, right? And I asked you about him and you explained a little bit. And so I was like, okay, this is just a green Martian man. I guess that's just part of what happens in DC, and I'm on the jet ski. So anyway, but then when I was, engaging with this and what was going on between him, the pale Martians, the understanding of what it was that had happened, all of that history, that here are people who are from where he's from. He's lost everything. And so there has to be that pull of these are my people, but they're also not his people. And so it's so heartbreaking in that way. And that imagine getting what you wanted that you thought was impossible, but it's not that thing. It's so close that that's worse than never getting it all, And so to that, I felt like that was so heartbreaking. And so by the time we got to the end, by the time Superman made his speech, not only did this arc turn me around on Superman, who I've never enjoyed, right? Turn me around on Superman, turn me around on JLA, turn me around on DC, for 4 issues. I think this is incredibly powerful. It's a lot. It is a flashing neon sign of comic book, shenanigans, and I'm here for it. But yeah, it's good. I'm still a little wary about some of it, but overall, I thought it landed pretty well. And the first time I read it, which was last week, immediately after the last issue, when I'd read the last issue and I was like, cliffhanger, fuck off, I'm reading this thing. And so I just kept going. And then I was texting you in the middle of it, and then I was like, the Superman stuff. And you were like, yeah, the Superman stuff. So it's pretty cool. I like it.
Good. Very good. What I particularly appreciate and what I hoped would land for you, and it seems to be, is you were sort of breadcrumbed into really caring, right?
Yes.
They gave you Green Lantern as this giant source of vulnerability. So I knew that would hook you, right? And then at the end of it, though, the pathos for Jean. And again, I've given you a lot of context that really opens that up for you, but even if all you had were these 4 issues, you would not have the depth, but it would still have depth. Yeah. And actually the getting what you want and it not being really what you want is a thing that we will see again in not too many issues of JLA in a really interesting way. And the idea of, well, I mean, we'll talk more about it in when we get into it. But the idea that Wonder Woman's response to "Where are your friends now?" is where we've always been, right here. That in that very picture are a bunch of people who are outsiders for one reason or another, or the literal last survivor of their species like Superman, or the orphan who turned himself into something better in Batman, the last Green Lantern, the Atlantean half-breed who is king. They don't stress the outsiderness in the way that the X-Men do. It's not a theme of the Justice League, but it is a character theme that I think, like I say, they just kind of like, here's a little breadcrumb, Lonnie. Oh, by the way, we're doing some giant, huge shit. Did you also notice that you're feeling things?
It's
like a Trojan horse of pathos.
Seriously, I've never seen anything like it. And it's taken me a while to adjust, but yeah, that was good. That was good. All right, so here we are. We've got our cover art, right? And it's Batman, it's Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, who we didn't see a lot of, but is still like really super present. Green Lantern, the Flash. They're all zooming out of the villain's lair, ready to kick some ass. I like it. I think it's a nice kind of, you can almost hear like the, John Williams-esque orchestra music kind of coming up behind them. I think it's pretty cool.
We're actually going to talk a little bit in this issue about things that I air quotes hear.
Yeah.
Even though they may or may not be present on the page or in the sound effects. But I think that that's a really good way to say what I like about this cover, which is to kind of come back to how you've talked before, that the story isn't about how it is, it's about how it feels. Yeah. Right? So like, does this cover really tell me anything about what's going on in the issue? No, but it absolutely tells me what the issue feels like. Absolutely,
which is one of the wonderful things about cover art, is that it can really it can kind of solidify theme. What is this about?
Yes,
and this is about this team of people coming together, to make sure that the world is safe. And I like that. Like, it's actually a very simple cover, but you do hear that swelling, John Williams, music symphony going up. And it's pretty great. I like it.
Now, I feel like you don't have a lot of opinion on the interior art, though. Like, it's still just, sort of an onslaught.
Wonder Woman.
Well, yeah, we'll
get
which
to
is
that
the
when
thing.
we get
We're gonna,
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to point out that there are a few really amazing touches for me. And you have some of these in your notes, but I'm going to go harder on some of them, right? But this might be more of a letterer thing, but I actually love when Superman says his name in a logo. We'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Because that's part of hearing things that may or may not actually be there.
Yes.
I loved the Martian shape-shifting effect. Like, most of the time when we get shapeshifter stuff, it's very fluid, it's liquid, right? And these were like breaking themselves into little pieces, like puzzle pieces, and putting themselves back together in different shapes. And it's just a take that I hadn't seen before. And I'd really like to know whose idea that was, because it's very super cool. But I also understand why people do not draw it that way all the time. And lastly, we have talked about the scope of this thing before, but from an art perspective, in this issue, we go from orbit to the center of the earth, from France to New York City, and to a place that doesn't exist in the still zone. And Porter never fucking misses a dribble, man.
Yeah.
Like, he is just keeps this thing going, even though it literally goes as high as it can go, as deep as it can go, as wide as it can go, and also into the cracks in reality. I'm damned impressed.
Yeah, it's pretty great. All right, so let's get into the story discussion. What is the ZZZZZ thing all about? What is that?
Okay, all right. This is in one way such a small thing, so I really want to talk about it and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
But it's literally the first couple pages,
Yes.
So things to keep in mind. Okay, just some baseline stuff you should know. That was fairly obvious by the time you got done with Superman's opening scene. But green kryptonite does not just kill him. It does kill him. Like, it's giving him accelerated radiation poisoning. But it also slowly robs him of his powers.
Okay.
And usually the senses all the super senses are the first to go. Now, that'll vary over time and in different continuities, but generally speaking, it's like the stuff like supervision, super hearing, all that stuff tends to go first, and invulnerability goes last. Like, that's sort of like built in. You actually see this played with in Morrison's All-Star Superman story at one point.
Right.
That he's starting to lose his powers, and thank goodness invulnerability is the last one, because that's how he's going to get home. But what I wanted to point out here is, first of all, that's one of the tip-offs that lets him realize that something is not right. Stuff is not as it appears, right? And I feel like it really kicks him in the emotional pants. Like, I feel like the making Lonnie care about Superman in this issue really starts on this first page, because there's an emotional kick in the pants here. The thing that motivates him is that he hears people needing him and the rest of the league, right? Okay, so here's the trick, though. ZZZZ is a sound effect.
Okay.
It is a well-known sound effect. It is the only sound effect that we see him hearing, which is a weird thing to say, but it's comics, right? We see him hearing. The rest of it is dealt with in narration. And it's actually so integrated into the page, you could almost miss it as a sound effect, except I know a little something.
Exactly.
Z, 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 Z is traditionally the sound that is made by Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen's signal watch.
Interesting.
So when Jimmy gets in trouble, he hits a button on the super watch and it goes Z, 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 Z at a level only Superman can hear. And then Superman knows that his best non-superhero friend is in trouble, and he goes and saves Jimmy every time. Like, that's the thing. And as a little bit of history, Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, is one of the longest running comics in superhero history. Like, he had hundreds of issues. And what's wild is, if you read them, I've got a big fat collection on my shelf. It's amazing. But what's wild is he really only uses the watch maybe 3 throws, or not even 3 throws out of 4, I shouldn't say, like 1 throw out of 4. Most of the time he gets himself out of trouble, or he's basically got the bad guys taken care of, and he hits the watch for Superman to come get him and take him to the cops. Like, he's a fairly self-sufficient dude.
I like
But
it.
when shit gets real, he hits the button. And this is another big emotional kick in the pants for me, because all of the things that motivate Superman, his best friend is in trouble and he needs to get loose from this situation and go save him. None of that is text. That is all subtext.
I had no idea. I thought it was just the sound of the kryptonite.
Yeah, no, that's like, it doesn't detract from anything if you don't know, but if you know, it is like an exclamation point on all that narration.
Wow.
The world needs him. His best friend needs him. Okay, I'm going to stand up.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
You know, my final thought on that is, like, Superman is just such a good person, y'all. Like, he's just, like, that's the deal. On top of whatever else he can do, he's just so good. Not perfect, because he stands up from there and is like, let's make a deal that lets me beat your teeth in instead of laser facing you. Right? So he's not a perfect man.
Right.
But he's good. And that is all brought home in some narration and the Z sound effect in a way that I thought you would appreciate a little depth on.
I do appreciate that, especially because most of this, I had no idea what the hell was going on. Most of this issue, I was like, all right, so there are a lot of Martians and they're changing shape. There was, that point where all of a sudden it's like their faces start cracking off. And I was like, okay, what is going, because I didn't know they were shapeshifters. I didn't know that I didn't know what the effect was. I thought it meant that they were disintegrating and falling apart on the page. And then as we went, I saw, Protex turn into a monster with a big belly full of teeth. Like, I got, that was interesting. John came in, he was wearing the Armek suit, so I thought it was Armek, but then Armek was chasing the fast Martian, and I don't remember what his name is because, oh my God, and I was like, I'm not looking it up. I thought John was in the Armek suit because he left the real Armek in the Gobi Desert, but then Armek is fast behind the one, and John is fighting Primate, and there's bad guy HQ, and what even the fuck is even happening? And I just got to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't know what's happening here, but I'm just going to keep reading. I'm just going to keep moving through it. Like, if I can't, it used to be, I would see something and I'd be like, okay, I don't know what this is. Let me look it up. Let me see if I can find a reference. Let me go back through the pages and see if I can see where I lost the thread, like all of that kind of stuff. At this point, I was like, you know what? Josh will explain it to me. I don't even know what the hell's going on.
So you've, again, my refrain for you for all of Justice League is you basically got it, right? Like you basically got it. The shape-shifting thing is such a fundamental part of Jean's power set. And we've talked about it a little bit. Like it's come up, when I told you a little bit about history and stuff, but like in the midst of all this, we've talked before. One of the things that we really appreciate about Morrison is there's no hand holding. Like you're smart, you'll figure it out. And you basically did.
I love that too. I mean, I really do. But at this point, I just I can't. I don't even know. I'll just ask Joshua later.
I really feel like there's only two bits that you sort of drop the ball on, and a little bit of it, and neither one are really, your fault. Like they're very much like you're smart, you'll figure it out, kind of moments. But one of them is the shape shifting that it's Jean was doing a triple cross, right? On them. And the other one we'll talk about in a bit is Bob Gray, right? Well, we'll talk more about him in a minute. But it is worth saying that one big part of Morrison's style, on top of all the other things that we've talked about, is they really do. All of the stories start to feel like those cartoon snowballs that just get bigger as they go down the hill. And it picks up momentum. And by the end of it, it all feels very rushed, and it's happening right now. And it's not like it's felt slow up till now, right?
Yeah.
That may or may not work for any given reader, right? Like for me, this is a place that I've grown to. I really appreciate it. And I have all this background to sort of make it clear to me.
Yeah.
But I really think that's what happened is you got caught in the Morrison snowball. But you handled it correctly, which is you stuck your arms and your legs and your head out and just went with it.
And just roll with it. Absolutely. I mean, definitely. Okay, so here's another thing that got my attention. I definitely noticed it. I didn't know what it was about. Superman speaking his own name in logo form. What is... I don't understand. The thing is, I dig lettering. One of my favorite things about comics is the power that is in the lettering. And the most powerful things, in our media are the things that we don't notice, right? That we don't that kind of are so beautifully done that they're invisible, right? So oftentimes I will take a deliberate moment to look at the lettering, study the form and the style and all of that kind of stuff and see what I can glean from that. But this one stood out where he's it's Superman. I'm first of all, speaking about yourself in the third person, whatever, but also the fact that Superman was in logo form. And I was I don't know how to interpret that as what does that mean? Does it mean that he is narcissistically obsessed with his own trademark? Is it one of those things where you don't pull on Superman's cape, right? You don't mess with Superman. What is that choice about? Because it just felt so weird.
It is absolutely weird, but it's also in the list of things I think only comics can do. It's stuff only comics can do. It would not work anywhere else. So in this particular context, I think that we're just supposed to read it with some kind of really powerful gravitas. And this is supported by the fact that everybody's how do we handle this? And they decide they have to mobilize the world, right? That will happen more than once in this run, by the way. So there's been all this mind control to make people hate the JLA. And when it's who's going to tell them to get it together and resist the Martians while we hold it together? It's unanimous. It's got to be you, Superman. He literally just got done saying, and in my heart of hearts, I believe in them.
Yeah.
They believe in me, and I believe in them.
That's so wonderful. Yeah.
So I don't know how that's supposed to sound. Right. But at the same time, in my, and this is a weird phrase, mind's ear, it just lands. It just hits with this, ladies and gentlemen, this is Superman. And it's I feel like we're supposed to hear it like everybody else hears it. Everybody else is living in terror. They're terrified. Martians are falling from the sky, And then they hear Superman's voice and they're oh, okay, fire. And the JLA will be here soon. It just, the closest I can get in my head is if you've ever listened to the old radio show, the Superman radio show, intensely popular at the time. And they had, I forget his name now, George Reeves, I believe. that might have been the man from the serial, so I apologize if I'm wrong there, but they had the same voice actor for Clark Kent and Superman. Yeah. And he spoke like up high and through his nose when he was Clark Kent. So he'd be like, gee, Lois, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do the thing. And because we couldn't see him duck into a phone booth or rip his shirt open, they did it with his voice. He would say, oh, no. This looks like a job for Superman. And like it would be in the middle of the sentence.
Right.
There would be no pause. Like it would be Clark Kent in the first half, no pause. At the for Superman, it just dropped into this whole other Superman octave. That's the closest I can get to how it sounds in my mind. But I think that's what they're doing is you're able to give this word, this icon, you know, this fictional metaphor for all these things. You're able to like inject that into this fictional reality in a graphical way that would never work on television. What the hell would you do? Would not even really work in a novel. Like you can kind of do it in a novel maybe, but it doesn't. There's so much less graphic representation in a novel, like almost none, right? That it's going to stick out too much, right? Like it's too much in a novel. Anyway, so I think that's what the whole piece of it is. And again, I put it in the notes just because I was like, only comics can do this.
Only comics can do this. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's what it amazes me so much after having spent this last year or so getting into like reading comics regularly. I'm fascinated by everything, the collaboration of it, the artwork, the things that you can do in places like in the gutter, right? You know, like in the empty space, there is meaning in the empty space in comics. It blows my mind every time. You know, it's just kind of amazing. But one thing that I'm just going to have to, I brought it up a little bit at the beginning. Let's go ahead and get it over with.
No, we got to talk about it.
This discussion
while we're doing the visual stuff. Yes.
Exactly. I love this line, what happened to Primate? And then it's Wonder Woman happened to her. And I'm like, I love that. And then I go to that page and I was like, are you kidding me? Like we have these two women, boobs everywhere. Like I understand it's zero gravity, like, but seriously, like the boobs are just everywhere.
It wouldn't matter.
And they are locked together at the pelvis. Right. And my first response, I have it in my notes, is FFS. I'm like, what in the hell is this? You know, they look like they're having sex. And we have two women, right? I think it's just Primate and just Wonder Woman. Do we have any other women in this whole thing? Aside from like the occasional newscaster?
No.
Yeah.
I think one of the other Martians, and as an aside, I don't know that anyone's ever taken it on, but I have also wondered, like, what is sex and or gender in a shape-shifting race of telepaths? You know,
fair enough.
But I think
question.
There are two female presenting, if I recall, two female presenting Martians, but otherwise, it's basically all sausage all the time.
They all look like men to me, except these two and these two. And like, I swear, like if you can find a page in any of these comics in which two male superheroes are fighting in space and looking like they're in a sexual position, you know, then I will shut up. But like, I saw that and I was like, get your fucking male gaze out of my comics. I am not here for this. You all are better than this. You know, you just are. Everything that they do in comics, there's so much. We're talking all the time about the amazing work that they do in, you know, in these comics, and then to bring it down to this, you know, I just like, it felt like a slap in the face to me. Like I was just not ready to see that. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting better, because we are getting so much better than that with our male characters. Like what they're doing with the other characters has been so deep and so meaningful. And Wonder Woman gets to fuck in space. Like that just infuriated me. But like, I mean, and the thing is, I think part of the reason why it infuriated me so much is because everything else is so great.
Yes, everything else with Wonder Woman specifically is so great.
Yeah,
like in the whole arc, and in this issue, like with Superman busy with Protect, she's the one who is there leading the League. You know, in the big group shot. And honestly, I have no defense for this male gaze business. But other than that, her fucking wrecking primate in orbit, mostly because she just out-endured her. Like, how the hell long was she going to hold her breath? I love that shit.
We get that whole how long can you hold your breath thing, and the Batman's like 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Don't ask me how I know. Like, all of that I absolutely adore, right? I think that that's great. And that, I think, is part of the reason why, like, in something that wasn't as good, I think it would annoy me less because my expectations wouldn't be so high. But like here I was feeling like I was in a space because she had the whole thing with Aquaman and they had their interaction and it wasn't sexualized there. And I was like, oh, great. Right. Like aside from the fact that, and I brought this up early in the artwork, like it's, boobs all like the boobs are like really like, it's a lot, but aside from that, like overall, I felt like the representation was pretty good and everybody's bodies are accentuated beyond, belief. So like the fact that like they're representing that, they're also representing Superman's muscles are also a lot. Everybody's muscles are also a lot. So I think that it's fair to say, that we're getting equal play there, but to have this one thing just come out of, for me, what felt like nowhere, and to be slapped with that, I felt kind of betrayed by the comic itself, in a really weird way.
We've really gone deep on it, so I don't need to go as hard on it. But I want you to be prepared for there to, unfortunately, be more of that. It's like the male gaze is really built into superhero stuff by and large. And what I am about to say is just by way of interest and not really by way of defense, because Morrison is themselves queer, and but they didn't draw this, right? Yeah. And Porter, like one of the reasons Porter got this job, I think, is because he's able to do this big, over the top, traditional, like the biggest widescreen, superhero stuff. I do think that there is one line here that I feel is fairly male homoerotic, which does not balance the scales because first of all, there's decades of male gaze in superhero comics, but also because the visual is so much more powerful than one line. Yeah. But I think it speaks to that whole things are being juggled here, right? And there's that moment when Protect says to Superman, "Can you feel me filling you up?" Right. And like again, that reads as potentially as suggestive in its way, but it's also like one pebble in the avalanche, of the rest of it.
Like the homoeroticism of it is not a problem. If Wonder Woman and Primate were girlfriends having sex in space, and that's what this was, they're fighting for the, survival of the Earth. And represented, like the thing is, we are looking at them from the outside in. That is what the male gaze is. So like the homoeroticism of it, I'm all here for that. Absolutely. Give me, all sorts of queer superheroes. I am into it. I would love it. That's not the problem. The problem for me is the way in which what is a fight to the death is portrayed when women are doing it. And that to me was really, really disturbing. So I just didn't care for that. But again, like, when I was talking about the boobs and the way that the boobs are like 3D in your face, like fine. So are all the muscles on the men. Like, so is everything. Like everything in this is neon sign flashing in your face. All right, fine. But yeah, this was just a bit much. So it was just one of those things where like, it was a moment for me that kind of took me out of it. But then of course, John, I'm almost out, and man, he brings me back in. Brings me back in. Here we have. There's so much going on with John in so little time, and there's things that are just like hinted at, and I'm sure there's things that are like flying right past me, like the ZZZZ, But here we have this moment where he says, "That was all the pale Martians ever had to offer our culture: war and hatred and destruction." And I'm like, well, this may not be intentional, but here we have John as a Martian of color, and then all the white ones are causing a lot of trouble, and I'm like, I feel it. Kind of like, I don't know if I'm reading something into that because I've, been doing some work and trying to be more sensitive to that kind of thing. But I found that to be like really kind of a powerful moment. And then in the end, when he says, "I must be the final arbiter. You do not know the culture. how fucking important that is, and how everybody gets out of his way and lets him do it. Like, lets him say, I know what needs to be done. This is my space. This is my lane. Leave me alone and let me handle it, right? Because I understand where all of this is coming from. I understand the context. I understand all of this. And I just I really appreciated that deeply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I have anything to add other than just to second all of that and to kind of highlight a line that really did that for me when he said, there are punishments that you may not approve. And no one questions him, right? And I mean, in the usual superhero grim and gritty bullshit that makes me tired, that would just be murder. Right? It would just be murder. But in this case, which Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman would not be okay with, let alone, Wally and Kyle would just be like, maybe don't murder people. But they never question him. They know him.
Yes.
They understand Jean as an individual and Jean as a final focal point of this entire lost civilization and culture. And they, as you say, they just get out of his way. And when it comes to the pale Martians, it is really interesting to me that almost every other time they show up, they just get called white Martians. And I don't want to ascribe anything necessarily to that, but at the same time, it hits hard.
It resonates. It really does. And I think that it's, and again, it's literally white Martians and green Martians. And so it's not exactly an analog. But it does feel like something that I'm like, fair enough. Like, let's go ahead and leave space for looking at things from the perspective of different, kinds of people in that circumstance. But, as long as...
and before we get into, we're going to talk about the mythology of it. But part of that mythology is that the pale Martians were on Earth fucking around. Basically being colonizers. Just poking around to see what they could do with the whole, with the whole thing. And, so again, I don't want to say it's definitely this because it might be other things also, but it's partly this.
It's got a resonance to it that I think is worth looking at. Absolutely. But while we're talking about Jean, and again, we talked about this a little bit in the open, but how powerful this is where, he's lost all of his people. And I also love the fact that, what you brought up earlier, that everybody, all of these superheroes are, because they are superheroes, by nature isolated. Even if their people still exist, nobody exists the way that they exist. Nobody understands the way. So they're all kind of isolated. They're all orphaned, in one sense or another. And so what they have for community is each other, because no matter what their different backgrounds are, they understand that experience in a way that nobody else really could. But here we have Jean, who has lost everything, and the devastation, in the moment that we understand, that we learn that they are Martians. Somebody who's savvy about comic books may have picked it up before I did, but I didn't know until Batman said, y'all are Martians, you're afraid of fire, here you go, let me light you on fire, So when we saw Jean in the beginning, for me, I didn't get the resonance of his placement in this story. And he was kind of absent for a lot of the story. We just didn't spend a whole lot of time with him. Then when he shows up, and here are people who are from where he's from, he knows the culture. So do they. They know it in a way that nobody else does. This is everything you ever wanted, except nothing you wanted, to have that. And we spend no time in it. This is the thing that's so amazing, and why I completely understand how much you love Grant Morrison's work, is that we're not spending time on it. We're not spoon feeding any of this. All of this is context where you as a reader have to do all the work yourself. You need to put all this together. But how heartbreaking is that? I finally gets to see people from where he's from, and he has to dispatch of them. He has to.
And it's the worst possible examples of his people.
Exactly. But it is still his people. To me, that in itself, that moment, there's a lot of good stuff in this run, but for that, That's what this run, like, for me, essentially comes down to. And to be in a story where if you're not paying attention, you could miss so much of that. But if you actually will sit and think about it, how incredibly powerful it is, and how Grant Morrison manages to make this so incredibly powerful without really spending that much time in it. It's magic. It's just magic. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how this works. I love it. It's magic.
I mean, so I love almost all the things that Morrison has done. They have a novel coming out soon that I just cannot at the time we're recording this. I have pre-ordered it. I'm hot for it, but so I'm in it to win it.
Yeah.
The thing that I think helps the superhero work is that Morrison has a really strong handle of the mythology, the depth. So, for instance, they can put in one sentence all of this feeling. When Jean says, "I'm sorry, Superman, I allowed my personal feelings to get in the way, but they are the last survivors of my people." And like, it's one sentence.
Yeah.
And you, as you say, you could miss it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's in the midst of other stuff we really like when he talks about the culture and being the final arbiter. There's all this stuff in like 3 word balloons that totally works right there. But if you recognize the length and breadth of these characters' histories, and that Jean is saying this to Superman, who is also the last survivor of his people, but does not have the memory and connection to those people that Jean does. Because incidentally, almost every time we run into Kryptonians, which is not very often, but almost every time we do, they are the assholes of space. They were the assholes of space when they were alive. They're the assholes of space now. And a lot of times you see the only good Kryptonian is Superman and Supergirl, who is influenced by him, right? But he doesn't remember his people. Jean was an adult when he was taken. I mean, so there's all these like multi-layers, and Superman's like, of course you did. Like there's just this empathy and understanding. And it's on the way to us building a watchtower on the moon.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's both the heart of the story and on the way to the bigger, wider stuff. And that's the deft touch that has that made me a fan of Morrison, specifically in superhero stuff, and led me to like look at their entire oeuvre. So.
Yeah, I'm very excited that they're writing a book. I would love to see their work in that format. So yeah, I'm going to order that. It's going to
be so weird.
I'm going to order that myself because that's going to be amazing. All right, so dipping into the mythology here, there was this, reference that these, pale Martians were put in the still zone, and then we actually have a shot of the still zone, and I'm like, okay, so what is the still like? And again, it's stuff that like in the end, it looks like a prison, so I guess it's a prison of some sort, basically. So yeah, I don't like, what is the still zone? What's the history there? What is that about?
Okay, I got a few things I want to unpack there too.
Okay.
Because Morrison plays in Jack Kirby's Sandbox a lot, and some of what happens here, I think, nods at that wider work. Like that's another thing that Morrison will often do across decades, sometimes nod at themes that, go on and on and on, right? So the still zone is probably the easiest one. We're going to see the still zone crop up a few more times under different names, because different groups of people discover it at different times and in different ways. So we're actually going to run into a villain later on that makes use of the still zone, who's never heard of Martians and just got to it in their own way. The most tie to the DC universe as a whole is that for a long time, since the Silver Age, Superman has had the Phantom Zone, and it was what Krypton used as a prison. They just put their criminals in the Phantom Zone, and it's only suggested that the Still Zone and the Phantom Zone are the same thing, but it's like a pretty easy leap. The Martians discovered it over here, Kryptonians discovered it over here. Sometimes it's been used for positive things. I mentioned Daxamites before, and that Mon-El is a character in the Legion of Superheroes. At one point, he was poisoned with lead in the present of Superboy, and Superboy put him in the Phantom Zone so he wouldn't die. from lead poisoning until they could find a cure for that. It took 1,000 years, unfortunately, because you don't age, you're immaterial. That's the punishment. You're stuck in there. And a lot of times you can see the real world, but you cannot interact with it. So that's what's going on with the still zone. The thing that's going on with we should have been superhumans and instead we're just humans that's interesting is let me take a quick step back to Jack Kirby.
Okay.
So Jack Kirby co-created the Marvel Universe as we know it. That's all I'm going to say because there's a million other things I could say. So it was a huge deal when Kirby moved from Marvel to DC in the 70s, and Kirby started for DC, a thing you've heard me talk about a lot. It's actually my biggest superhero tattoo, is from this set of stories called The New Gods, or sometimes called The Fourth World, because the Fourth World literally started with the death of the old gods, who you could recognize as some Marvel guys if you looked closely at the silhouettes. That was the third world, and now we are into the fourth world. It has been suggested before, often by Morrison, that one of the reasons Earth is so much the center of all this stuff is that Earth will be the cradle from which the fifth world is born, which means Earth is where the next new gods will come from. And it is therefore suggested that that future was punted further than it should have been, galactically, cosmically speaking, when the pale Martians fucked about and turned us into just humans instead of superhumans. So that's a lot of suggested stuff and me pulling from bunch of different Morrison work and other people's work in the fourth world, not to mention Kirby's own, foundation stones. But I think that's a lot. So when you ask, what's the mythology? Oh, sister, let me tell you.
Yeah, that would take a long time to definitely go through all of that. But it's pretty cool. And the thing is that, like, honestly, I was able to get the general gist of everything.
Yeah.
Like, I was able to put it together enough
tragedy.
through context clues. Yeah, like, that stuff is there, but it's not anything that basically blocks me from accessing the story. So it's and this is the thing, again, about comics that just astounds me is how much material there is to draw from. And that, if you are a writer who knows, what's going on and how all of this goes together, you can pluck a piece from here and pluck a piece from there and create deep conflict, deep story, deep resonance. And that's what mythology is about. Mythology is about being able to revisit all of these human experiences and find a new way of looking at them and understanding them from different perspectives. It's amazing and beautiful. So moving from mythology into philosophy, this is what got me.
Oh my God, you are literally moving from the mythos to the logos. I love it. Yes, let's talk about the philosophy.
We are not messing around here in the gutter. So we move from mythology to philosophy, and we get to the end of this story, and we have this wonderful moment where the JLA are examining their motives and questioning their actions, and I fucking am here for it. There was this moment, I think it was Wonder Woman who said, "Are we doing too much or too little? When does intervention become domination?" And I'm like, hot damn for asking that question. Like, you may not know the answer. You may not understand. And that's what makes human life so freaking complicated, is that often nothing is one thing. Everything is 8 different things in a trench coat, and you have to sort out which ones are good, which ones are bad, and at what point do you figure that out, I love this. Humankind has to be allowed to climb to its own destiny. We cannot carry them there. Oh my God. I mean, that was wonderful. I absolutely loved that. And what you are not expecting at the end of all of this, all of this amazing in-your-face, neon flashing lights, superhero, psychedelic stuff, is to have a page full of deep, thoughtful questions. And then there was this final thing, is how they summed it up. Why should they need us at all? And then Superman, to catch them when they fall. And that was when it worked for me. That was when Superman worked for me. That was when, I was like, yes, absolutely. I'm in. I love this. Because you do not expect, after this wild like car on two wheels riding through the desert chasing Martians and all these like different forms, like all of mind control and everything being so dialed to 11 that Morrison at the end pulls all of this together into a fucking philosophical thread about like the nature of what it means to be a superhero, to have with great power comes great responsibility. What is that responsibility? And the fact that these people with all of these superpowers are asking themselves these questions that are so essential to what it is to be a superhero, that was the moment. Like, yeah, I got thrown out a little bit by a couple of things in this issue, but that was the moment where I was like, fuck yes, baseball. Like, let's do this. I absolutely loved it.
This is a thing that crops up again. Morrison has themes that stretch across decades with this. Yeah. In All-Star Superman, Superman actually discusses the Fortress of Solitude as a time capsule from the dawn of the age of superheroes. Wow. Which means that Superman fully expects everyone on Earth to be a super being at some point. Like, oh my God. Why wouldn't they be? Krypton did it. Mars did it. Why wouldn't Earth do it? And we're going to be the example along the way. And he's, literally dying at that point. Like he's basically like getting his affairs in order and describing the fortress as the time capsule from the dawn of the age of superheroes. We'll see it again as we progress through JLA when we get to the DC 1 million and we see that the legacy of the Justice League survives into the deep future, like the farthest reaches of the future. Their example survives.
Oh my God.
And humanity thrives under it, that kind of thing. Doesn't mean everything's fine. Adventure is still a thing, like danger still happens, but humans are better because of this. They did not dominate. They caught us when we fell. I also feel like it addresses some of the sort of inherent boundaries of superhero fiction. Superheroes tend to be reactive by nature. We want them to be sort of an alternate present, especially Marvel went hard for this, the world outside your window, but also superheroes. But there's a point where that just falls off. It doesn't make sense anymore. And so we just have to agree to not let the world building sprawl that far. Philosophically, this can land us in a place where we're like, well, what? The dumbest fucking question in the world. Well, why doesn't Bruce Wayne just solve crime in Gotham by writing checks? Well, because it's fucking boring, for one thing. And for another thing, yeah, money helps, but it's not the only thing. Like, I have a much bigger, robust answer to that, but that's just the dumbest. Show me you don't understand a fucking thing about fiction or superheroes without actually saying you don't understand a thing about fiction and superheroes. This allows them to exist in a space where they are aspirational while accepting the limits of how the fiction works, instead of pushing against those and pretending that you are more adult and an intellectual giant. Fuck you. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. So anyway, after that incredible cap, like on this whole thing, right? We have
the epilogue.
Oh my God, we've got like a coda, right? Which is, who the hell is Bob Gray? I'm presuming this means like it said this was 69 people, right? That just suddenly, kind of landed in human life and not really knowing where they came from or whatever. At least that was what I was. So, and they said there were 70 Martians in the air that were coming down to Earth. So I did the math. And figured out that these are all the Martians who are now living human lives. And I don't know, like, I'm just checking with you. Like, first of all, Martians who are afraid of fire and he's a firefighter. Like, I kind of dig that, right? I thought that was a pretty nice thematic resonance. But did I read that right? Am I understanding this right? Or did I completely miss it?
This was Jean's punishment to them.
Oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I knew they had become, but I didn't understand that this was what Jean had chosen.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes. He rehabilitated them, essentially. Actually, It's layers of irony. Like, the punishment is layers of irony. He robbed them of their identity as individuals and as pale Martians, and then convinced them that they were what the pale Martians always hated.
Oh my God, I love it so much. I completely missed it. I was like, I don't understand what happened here. But yes, John was going to punish them, and that was the punishment he chose. I guess I thought they were hiding from him in human form somehow.
No, he forced them. He did this to them. And to an extent, this is a little bit, there's some titchy ethical things here, which we get to dance around with the you don't understand the culture, right? Yeah. He essentially lobotomized them and robbed them of who they were, but he's doing it to an extent to force them into the humility that they would never have found without the punishment.
Right.
Like, the pale Martians hate humans. They think they're bugs beneath their heel. Well, guess what? You're going to live out the rest of your days as one. Not only are you going to live out the rest of your days as one, you're going to live out the rest of your days as one who serves all of them. And he serves all of them by confronting the thing that we as a people fear the most as a firefighter.
Yeah.
You're going to be a human. You're going to work to save humans in the most mundane way possible while confronting our collective cultural greatest terror. Only I can be the final arbiter. You do not understand the culture.
Oh my God. Well, that's fucking chef's kiss. And I'm really glad that we had this discussion, because otherwise I would have missed it. I was just confused. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on there. But that absolutely makes sense.
That is one of the places where I feel like the Morrison just like trusts the reader to be smart, which that sounds like I'm saying you're not smart. There's a million things going on here. Yeah. But I mean, that's one of those places where, could our hands have been held? Yes. Would it have landed like this moment when I said, oh, Lonnie, here is the thing, like it just, yeah. And as an aside, I don't know that Morrison was doing this on purpose, but there's actually a long running tradition of criminals being punished ironically, especially in DC Comics.
I dig it. Yeah.
I want to point out to you that the Sandman has actually done this.
Yeah.
I more than once. So that's Neil Gaiman picking up on that as well, that the Sandman cosmically punishes people by, giving them what they want, only it sucks, or something like that. There was also, there's a big character, I will not go too far down this road, but there's a character called the Spectre, and that eventually he was revealed to be God's wrath. And it was like the meeting of old EC horror comics and superheroes, because he would stop criminals and then punish them with some horrible, painful, yet incredibly ironic punishment. So it's both a sort of an exclamation point on Jean's pathos, but shows him to be this arbiter of justice. Like, it does all of this really great stuff with Jean, and also I feel like fits into this grand tradition.
I love it, and I'm not even mad. I'm not even mad at Grant Morrison that I didn't get it. Like, I don't even care, because having you explain it to me was really, really great, and anybody who read it along with us also got that. But yeah, I think that's absolutely incredible. I love that was the punishment. Did not get that, but again, that was where I may have fallen down in my job as a reader, because Grant Morrison definitely is like, hey, I will carry one of these, tubs of water, but you got to carry the other one. I dig it.
And as a reader, I really appreciate that. I mean, I think I joked an episode or two ago about a lot of the superhero fiction that I get now, especially in movies and TV, comes, as I called it, pre-chewed.
Yes.
Morrison joints don't come pre-chewed. You have to, they're like a Blue Apron. You're going to have to do some of the cooking.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm down for more. All right, so Joshua, here we are. We are winding up our first season of In the Gutter, and as we do with everything, we're going to talk about what's your favorite part. What is your favorite piece of art from this issue.
I kind of mentioned that I love the length and breadth of the whole thing, but I think that at the end of the day, my favorite piece of art has to be the Martian shape-shifting look because it is just so unexpected and so not what we usually get from shape-shifting. Like, it just shows an unexpected level of thought. Not that there's no thought, like, it's just on top of all this other stuff. Right. Here is this really unexpected piece. I really appreciate the unexpected in that way. What about yourself, Lonnie? Your favorite piece of art?
Well, I have to say, like, I think as weird as it was, I love the Superman logo in the bubble. Like, I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. It looked totally weird, but there was something about the boldness of that choice. Like, the overall boldness of the choice that I was like, you know what? Respect. Absolutely.
Now, tell me about your favorite part of the story. I think that's probably been telegraphed at this point, but please... Tell me, when it comes to the landing, what landed?
Well, it's the page of philosophy, but especially Superman, to catch them if they fall. And again, like, I've never been a big Superman fan. I have always seen Superman as this kind of empty, all-powerful, overpowered. We're not going to have the discussion about whether or not superheroes can be overpowered, but I've always felt that way about Superman, just kind of boring, you know? But seeing this deep philosophical affection, you know, coming from Superman. It is everything that I love all wrapped up now into this dude. And like, yes, I am still a Batman stan. Like, I'm absolutely going to be like, I am Batman ride or die all the way because I like the gritty dark. But Superman has just won my heart in that moment, and won my heart not by being strong, not by punching bad guys in the face, but by being super thoughtful about it. And it just, I adore it.
Same, and I'm not even sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything you said. It's everything you said, but also, not the punching, but the why the punching, and just the affection that Superman has for humanity in contrast to the HyperClan, who are like, they're bugs. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
And my personal favorite moment, literally everyone in that panel is smiling, including Batman.
Oh, smiling Batman. Oh my God.
We don't get it that often, especially when he's trying to keep his teammates / coworkers at arm's length.
Right. All right, that is it for this season of In the Gutter. We hope you enjoyed our all bangers all the time approach, and here is what you can look forward to next season.
We will be back with all new episodes of In the Gutter in the new year, with the continuation of both Brubaker's Captain America and Morrison's JLA storylines that we started here in this season, as well as just a little taste of my personal favorite superhero of all time, Patsy Walker Hellcat.
I am very much looking forward to that. Did not necessarily get a real strong sense of I think, her as a superhero from the Jessica Jones TV series, which is my only my only connection with Patsy Walker. So I'm really, really looking forward to that.
I'm excited to take you through that one, partly because I'd always been like kind of a low-key fan of hers, just because of the meta-ness. We'll talk more about it next season. There's all these reasons that I took note of her and really enjoyed her when she showed up. But this is the series that made me a Hellcat stan.
I love it. All right, everybody. We are going to be back in the new year. Until then, keep your mind in the gutter.
Thanks for listening to In the Gutter with Joshua Unruh and Lonnie Diane Rich. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider talking about it with your friends, leaving a review somewhere, or supporting Chipperish Media, patreon.com/Chipperish.